Well, Grand Rising, and welcome to Yolanda Monet's Motivational Moment. Before I start, I must do my salutations. Abaragani. Assalamu alaikum. Ikaru. Now that I've done my salutations, let's get into the meat of the message for today. As you know, we are concentrating on this series of the African American history before 1865. Now, just to let you guys know, you can go to my YouTube page, which is Yolanda Monet, ELONDA Hatter. So you can always find all of my talks there. So just to let you know, you can go there to get it. Thank you. So now let's get into the message. African American life in the antebellum America was shaped by the brutal institution of slavery. The plantation system relied on enslaved labor for cash crops. While slave codes restricted rights and freedoms, families faced constant threat of separation through sale or relocation. Despite the oppression, African Americans built strong communities and preserved cultural traditions. Free black populations in the North cities established churches, schools, and mutual aid societies. Resilience took many forms, from small acts of defiance to organizing rebellions and escaping via the Underground Railroad. Now let's get to the historical content. The antebellum period of the American history was from 1815 to 1861, characterized by increasing sectionalization and tensions between the North and the South. Slavery played a central role in the economics, the social, and political landscape of the antebellum South. Intervention of the cotton gin in 1793 led to the boom of cotton production and increased demand for slave labor. The Second Middle Passage involved the domestic slave trade within the United States, forcibly relocating enslaved people from the Upper South to the Deep South. Nat Turner's rebellion in 1831 and other slave uprisings heightened fears among white Southerners and led to stricter slave laws. Abolitionist movements gained momentum in the North, with figures like Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman advocating for the end of slavery. Compromise of 1850 attempted to address the issues of slavery in the new territories required after the Mexican-American War. It seems to me that everywhere they went, they divided and conquered. They never did anything on their own. They always took from others. Slavery and the plantation system. The plantation system in the antebellum South relied heavily on the labors of enslaved Africans or African Americans to produce cash crops like cotton, tobacco, and sugar. Enslaved people worked long hours under harsh conditions, facing physical punishment, sexual abuse, and family separation. Slave codes enacted by Southern states severely restricted the rights and freedoms of enslaved individuals. Domestic slave trade forcibly separated families and communities, with enslaved people being sold at auctions to the highest bidder. Slave quarters on plantations were very small, cramped, and poorly constructed, offering little privacy or comfort. Enslaved women faced unique challenges, including sexual exploitation by white slaveholders and burdens of caring for their own families while also working in the fields. The resistance to slavery took many forms, some as small acts of defiance to organizing rebellions and escape attempts via the Underground Railroad. Now, the urban and free black communities. Free black communities existed in both North and South, with large population cities like Philadelphia, New York, and New Orleans. Many free African Americans worked as skilled art, art skilled people such as blacksmiths, carpenters, and seamstresses. Despite their legal status, free Americans faced discrimination, limited economical opportunities, and the constant threat of being kidnapped and sold back into slavery. African American churches, schools, and mutual aid societies provide support and a sense of community for free black population. Some free Africans, such as David Walker, Maria Stewart, became prominent activists in the abolishment of slavery. Relationships between free Africans and enslaved individuals were complex, with some free blacks owning slaves themselves or working as slave catchers. However, many free African Americans also assisted in the Underground Railroad and advocated for the abolishment of slavery. Now let's talk about family and social life. Family ties were important to enslaved African Americans despite the constant threats of separation through sale and forcible location. Enslaved people formed extended kinship networks which often are referred to each other as brother, sister, cousin, even if not biologically related. And if you see or notice, we still do that today. Marriage ceremonies among enslaved individuals were not legally recognized, but many couples will hold informal ceremonies and consider themselves married in the eyes of the community. Naming practices often involve the using of biblical names or names that reflect African heritage, such as Kunta Kinte or Odoba. Enslaved parents taught their children survival skills, cultural traditions, and values despite the limitations imposed by slavery. Music, storytelling, and dance played a vital role in the social life of enslaved African Americans, providing a means of expression, communication, and cultural preservation. Spirituals, work songs, field hollers often contains coded messages or express the sorrows and hopes of the enslaved individuals. Now, when I was younger, there was a song that we learned in our choral class called Follow the Drinking Gourd. And that was really talking about looking at the North Star in order to find the Underground Railroad to get home. So with us singing that song, it let us know that we are on the right track, and that if you wanted to be free, then come and go with us and follow the drinking gourds. Now, there were a lot of songs that let us know that, number one, Harriet Tubman was here, and that if we wanted to run away with her, there were different songs that let us know, wade in the water, God is going to trouble the water. So there's in the different frames or the different stances of the song let you know what was going on at the time. So a lot of our old spirituals were actually songs to let us know that where we needed to be, how things were going at this time, if it was a safe place for you to stop, if the master and his little imps have not or have been in this area, it lets the person know that this is not a safe place for you to go. And we also made quilts. We would put different fabrics up in different shapes to let the person know that this is the right course to go to be free. So if you're wanting to be free, then follow the different signs that we leave you. So we were very innovative in letting others know that this is the way, even though some of us ourselves couldn't be free at that time. But we still helped our brother and sister to come to freedom in hopes that one day they will come back for us. Now, religion and spirituality. Christianity played a significant role in the lives of many enslaved African Americans, with some slaveholders encouraging conversations as means of control. African tradition, religious, and spiritual practices such as Islam, Yoruba, Vodun, also persisted among enslaved populations. And just to let you know, my people are of the Yoruba culture. My original people are from Nigeria. Somewhere along the line of my paternal grandmother was a Yoruba female. So I'm thinking that our first lineages, when we were brought over here, we were brought over here by a Yoruba female. And she was able to withstand the horrible ride over here and being able to produce while she was in America. Okay, now enslaved preachers such as Nat Turner, Bismarck Vesey became influential leaders within the community and sometimes used as positions to organize resistant effects. Slave owners often used biblical passages to justify slavery, while enslaving people reinterpreted scriptures to emphasize themes of liberation and justice. Just a little tidbit. Slave owners adapted a book called the Slave Bible. And within the Slave Bible, they took out a lot of the books in the Bible and left only the books in the Bible that edified what they were teaching, meaning 3/4 of a slave. 3/4 of a human, that we should honor our slave masters. So everything that considered people being slaves and a subordinate was placed in that Slave Bible. And it was really funny because I got a chance to look at and even read some of the stuff that was in the Slave Bible, and it really took me for a loop, because they didn't read the whole passage, the passage before that, the book before that, anything after that. The only thing they took was the slave part, which sometimes ministers do that today. They take the part out that they want to talk about and just horn in on that instead of giving the full picture of the total or the totality of the situation. Spiritual and religious gatherings provided a sense of hope, community, and resilience for enslaved African Americans. Hush harbors were secret gatherings where enslaved people could worship and express their faith freely, away from the watchful eye of the white slaveholders. The Second Great Awakening is a religious revival movement in the early 19th centuries, which led to increasing conversations among both white and black Americans. Now let's talk about education and literacy. Slave codes in many southern states prohibit the teaching of enslaved people to read and write, fearing that literacy will lead to the rebellion and resistance. Despite these restrictions, many enslaved African Americans learned to read and write through different methods, such as secret schools, or with the help of sympathetic whites. Frederick Douglass, a former enslaved person who became a prominent abolitionist, learned to read and write as a child and emphasized the importance of education in his activism. Free African American communities in the North placed a high value on education, establishing schools and literary societies. Black colleges and universities such as Lincoln University, Wilberforce University were founded on the antebellum period to provide higher education and opportunities for African Americans. Literacy rates among free African Americans in the North were higher than those that were enslaved counterparts in the South. In 1850, approximately 50% of the free African Americans in the North were literate, compared to less than 10% of the enslaved people in the South. Now let's talk about the resistance and the rebellion. Enslaved African Americans resisted the opposition through various means, from small acts to defiance to large-scale rebellion. Day-to-day resistance include slowdown of work, faking illnesses, breaking tools, and running away temporarily. Maroons were enslaved people who enslaved and informed independent communities in remote areas such as swamps or mountains. Slave rebellion, while rare, struck fear into the hearts of white Southerners and led to increased repression and violence against enslaved populations. The notable rebellions include Gabriel Rebellion in the 1800s, the German Coast Uprising in 1811, and the Nat Turner Rebellion in 1831. The Underground Railroad, a network of secret routes and safe houses, helped thousands of enslaved people escape from freedom in the North or Canada. Just to put a pin here, a lot of when the white people would take us in as a part of the Underground Railroad, many of them only took women and children, and the boy child must be under the age of 13. The boy child must be under the age of 13 in order to be hidden. And they hid us up under their homes, in crawl spaces, or in places where people wouldn't think to look. In churches, we were often hid up by where the bell rung. We were hung up there, and, it didn't matter what age you were, or, if you were male or female, they would take you in. But to go into homes, it could not be a male over the age of 13. All males had to be under the age of 13. Females at any age could come, mothers could come, grandmothers could come. Just to give you a little tidbit, okay? Now, Harriet Tubman, a former enslaved woman, became one of the most famous conductors of the Underground Railroad, taking numerous of trips to guide enslaved people to freedom. And just to put a little tidbit right there, my granddaughter asked me, how did these people go underground? And I had to tell her that the underground is a literary or just a tag that they put on the railroad or trying to get away, because some of us had to go up under houses and some of us had to be hidden. So there was a lot of things that were done to help keep us covered or to try to follow within the Underground Railroad. I said, but we were not literally walking underground. It was called underground because we had to go into little spaces to be saved or to have protection. Now let's go to cultural contributions and legacies. African American culture in the antebellum period was a rich tapestry of African, Europe, and Native American influences. Enslaved Africans brought with them wealth of knowledge, skills, traditions, including agricultural techniques, medical practice, and expressions. And just to let you know, put a pin right here with the medical practices, 90%, or I'll just say all of them, when we were in Africa, we would use certain plants to heal certain things. If we had a stomach ache, there was a plant to heal that. How many of you know of all the benefits a dandelion holds? Now, I am an aspiring herbalist, so I do a lot of things with herbs to heal the body. Lemon, turmeric, cayenne pepper, ginger. A lot of that stuff was used to heal the body, that African Americans used to heal the body. My grandmother would make a cold medicine out of caliver oil, rock candy. It was a lot of stuff that was in there. Ginger, orange peels, lemons, and she would put it up under her bed and let it ferment, so that when winter came, all of us had to line up and get a spoonful of that nasty stuff. But we were never sick. We never had a cold. And it's just me, I'm thinking that nowadays we really do need to go back to how it was in the beginning. We really do need to find out what herbs will help us, because these pharmaceutical people are keeping us on drugs after drug. One drug heals one thing, but it makes a mess out of a whole lot of other things. So learning which drugs to use, how to use them, milk thistle, how to use different drugs to help us to move forward or to be well within ourselves is very important. So don't look away or say, oh, that's just witchcraft, or that's not of God. Anything that God makes on this land is for us to use. Pharmaceuticals are man-made. They are man-made. And even the doctors who give you these medicines, do your history. Find out what it does. What are the side effects? I won't be able to hear, but at least I'll be able to see. We want to make sure that you are whole and content within yourself. Now, American music, such as spirituals, blues, work songs, led to the foundations of many later genres, like jazz, gospel, or hip hop. The Gullah or Geechee culture, which developed among enslaved people in the sealands of South Carolina and Georgia, preserved many of the African traditions and languages, cuisines, and crafts. African American folklore, including tales of the Bird Rabbit and John Henry, served as a means of culture and preservance in resistance. Now, John Henry, I learned a poem about John Henry in the 6th grade, and it went a little bit like John Henry was a steel driving man. A steel driving man was he. And they talked about the things that John Henry did and how John Henry built. Even though John Henry got beat, he built and he started some things, and he was able to teach his people how to do certain things. Now, okay, it says the legacy of slavery and the resilience of African American culture continue to celebrate or continue to shape African society and identity to this day. The contribution of African Americans in the antebellum period from the labor that fueled the economy on the cultural traditions that enriched American life have held a long-lasting impact on all nations. So with that being said, guys, when we talk about our lives and how the African American culture have influenced many different things, from the food that we eat, the clothes that we wear, just everything came from us. We brought all of those things with us. Laborer, being able to mathematics, being able to tell the time by the stars, and even the Indians told time by the sun. If the sun set in a certain area, they could tell you what time of day that was. So never negate your small beginnings because others doesn't understand your history. Our history did not start in slavery. It interrupted our history. So with that being said, guys, look me up on YouTube, Elonda Monet Hatter. I got to go. I love you, but God loves you more. And always remember, I'll see you at the top because the bottom is way too crowded. Peace.